and today we're going to be reviewing the new Sony A9 III. Let's get into it. I'm currently filming on my FX3, which I'm used to the cinema line, and then I also have the A7C2 up there. So almost immediately, I really like the feel of the body. Ergonomically, it just fits your hand. A lot of times with the Sony cameras, especially if you have bigger hands, your pinky kind of ends up folding over. But with this, I could grip it pretty comfortably with one hand. One of the features that I'm most excited about is the LCD screen. So not only does it flip out like this, but then also it's kind of like the A7 III, which was my first Sony camera. So it's just a culmination of both the new design and the old one. And I think that this design should definitely be the standard of all new Sony cameras moving forward. So this camera has 5 different custom buttons and they're super clicky, a lot clickier than any other Sony camera that I've seen. Just a small little thing, but I think it really makes a difference, especially if you're wearing gloves or you have different layers on and you can't really feel the buttons as well. So then the 5th customizable button is for power mode. That's to access the 120 frames per second for photos. And it's at a really perfect spot right there. So when you grip it, it's easily accessible with your middle finger, or honestly, you could do your ring finger, depending on how big your hands are. So when it comes to the sensor, this camera is a 24 megapixel sensor. And what makes it so special is it's the first global shutter camera. And what that means is instead of the sensor being a rolling shutter, it's a global shutter, which means that all the pixels are firing simultaneously. And then when looking at the side, we have all of these amazing options on these doors. So, you know, whatever you're doing, whether that's live streaming or using an external monitor, you have all of the options that a flagship Sony camera should have. So Robert's Camera Store, located right here in Indianapolis, was kind enough to send me this camera for about a week. And I'm just gonna be putting it through its paces. So whether that's testing out the global shutter for video or its high-speed photo capabilities, just gonna be really trying it out for the next week. And while I'm testing out the A9 III, I'm also gonna be giving it to my filmmaker friends for their first impressions too. Like, that is wild.
Oh,
Crazy.
it's the real deal. It's doing things, you know?
Insane.
Check it out.
Bro, that is crazy. This thing has that weird, really cool flip out screen. It's a lot beefier than the A7 IV, but in a good way. It's like more grippable almost. The plastic feels like so much better than the A7 IV.
That screen's actually crazy.
It is. This is like the perfect screen, to be honest. Like, the one thing that I miss from my A7 III is it just doesn't flip up like this because I'm always shooting lower. This is like the best of all worlds.
You can fire from the hip.
Yes, exactly. So good.
All right, I'm here with Ziad today. We are currently at Bentley and just kind of testing the A9 III's global shutter. And Ziad, I'm gonna put you on the spot, but do you know why global shutter is so important?
Very much so. So I've shot at Bentley for the last almost 3 years, and one problem I always have is the LEDs. It always flickers on the video. It almost looks like it's rolling. So I'm excited to see the A9 III and if that global shutter fixes it.
Yep, so we're gonna cut to some car footage, but yeah, it should be really fun. So we're shooting in broad daylight right now, so we're not gonna be able to see the headlights. So here's a shot with the FX3 with rolling shutter versus the A9 III global shutter.
Ever doing a commercial project that I can't have any of that really weird LCD, LED like type flicker, that's what I would need the A9 III for. My FX3, my $4,000 FX3 doesn't do that. My A7 IV doesn't do that, so I can definitely see it helping with that. And I heard that the stabilization on it's pretty crazy too. I'm shooting handheld all the time. I've almost stopped using gimbals, so I think that would be really useful as well for me too.
I really just avoid a lot of LED screens as much as I possibly can, but if you can't, and if you need to highlight a car like this that has a really impressive screen, I would definitely recommend the A9 III with global shutter. It's the first of its kind, and you could buy it and rent it at Robert's Camera, and the image stabilization is just really incredible. Again, I'm not really using a Ronin or a stabilizer here, and then also the flip LCD screen works wonders too. So today we're heading to St. Elmo. A lot of times when people think about high-speed cameras, they're thinking about bird photography, they're thinking about sports, but I love filming cocktails and, you know, taking pictures of them. So I saw this really cool video online, and I'm gonna put it right here, and I just want to replicate it, and I think it's gonna turn out really great. We're just about set. We got a key light here, we got a miniature ProMaster light here, and then we're rocking the A9 III with the flash just to make sure that we got all the liquid particles here. We're probably going to cover up the A9 III just because it's going to be in the splash zone. But David, how are you feeling about it?
Feeling great. It's going to be awesome. We're going to pull it off.
Predictions.
Yeah.
David thinks it's a one take. I think it's going to take two. Why am I nervous? You ready? In 3, 2, 1, go.
So much for our one take.
Second take.
That's all right. That's all right.
Alright, and in 3, 2, 1.
That's going to be crazy.
That might be a good one, hopefully.
Might have been it.
That feels good.
1.
I don't really shoot sports or kind of the more fast-paced, like stereotypical actiony things that you'd use this camera for, but I do a whole lot working with bars and cocktails and that sort of thing. And just looking at the photos, I was super impressed. Whenever we zoomed in on the detail on those splash shots, even with the size of the sensor, it was incredible. Just like that detail and the speed at which it was able to capture things. This camera just covers your bases. It takes care of you. Like, it was really able to just do exactly what we wanted it to do in like half the amount of time that it would have taken with another camera.
All right, I got my friend Isaac.
What's going on?
Over here. Isaac's a hybrid shooter, so this camera is pretty up his alley.
Indeed. Oh, let's go, man. So I was going to buy the A7R4, and then the A7R5 was announced, and I was so glad they did this. So Sony, if you're watching, thank you tremendously.
There you go. So that's 120.
And then this is less,
Yep.
and then medium.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So if you don't want to spray and pray, you could be select if you want.
I do want to try some single shot, yeah. This is always a good view of Indianapolis. Let's show off the beauty of the city. It sounds like it's not even taking photos. It feels fake. Like, but it's the real deal. It's doing things, you know? The detail that it's capturing. And we're still zooming. I'll tell you what, like, it feels unnecessary, but I imagine in these next few years, people are going to figure out so many uses for it. And that impression happening for the next cameras, it's just going to get better and better. That's so exciting.
Yo, you wanna try out the new Sony A9 III?
Dude, oh, I'm gonna take some pics. We're at 120 4K right now.
And no flickering?
No flickering.
No flickering, so you don't have to avoid LED screens anymore?
This would be sick for the hybrid capabilities of it. And definitely the pre-record, I think, is the cool feature.
It could pre-record to up to a second, so if you miss anything. All right, so for the past week, I was able to test out the A9 III in multiple different scenarios to test out the multiple different features that Sony provided in this camera. And so we started off at Bentley Motors to test out the global shutter and the image stabilization for video. It was really cool to use 60 frames per second and not get flickering in the LED screens, and that's just really useful when you're filming anything with LED screens in the background. And we were able to see the new BMW all-electric vehicle in person, which I've never seen before, so that was really cool. And then we moved on to St. Elmo. A huge shout out to Hughes Culinary because they allowed us to film in their space, especially during a busy week with the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis. And then I moved on to a podcast setup where I was filming for over an hour, and I could confirm that the A9 III does not overheat. I was filming in 4K 10-bit, and that was really impressive just because you don't want to worry about the camera crashing, especially on a client shoot. So who's this camera really for? It's obviously marketed as a sports and photo camera, but I'm not in those two buckets, and I still use the camera to create unique content. If you're a hybrid shooter filming on something like the A7 IV or even the A7 III, I would say the A9 III would be a lovely upgrade for you. I was really surprised by the video capabilities. The image stabilization was a lot better than I thought. I don't think I would ever use a gimbal with the A9 III. The image stabilization is really impressive. And then also the global shutter is just some feature that I really don't want to worry about LED screens anymore. I'm really tired of, bumping my shutter or not being able to film in 60 frames or higher. Didn't even touch on the pre-capture mode, and I film a lot of different events, and sometimes I do miss, a handshake or a hug. And so with pre-capture mode, that would be really cool just to kind of go back in time and get that moment, and that could really make or break an event. So with the photo capabilities, obviously the 120 frames per second is the big feature, but I also really like the second dial on the camera. Coming from an A7C II and FX3 user, I loved the tactile switch that I was able to have with the different drive modes and focusing modes. And I think a lot of different people, including myself, are fixated on specs nowadays, and I was really surprised about the 24 megapixels and how well it held up. I was able to zoom in and not have a problem with chromatic aberration or blurriness. So shout out to my friends at Hughes Culinary and my friends Ziad and Patrick Armstrong for helping me test out the A9 III. And obviously this video would not be possible without my friends at Roberts and Used Photo Pro. Thank you for allowing me to test out this beautiful camera, and I will see you guys in the next one.